So there is a tool, and his name is Richard Crannon. There's a tool that I've developed, and it's free. It's called the emotional literacy exercise. You can do it anywhere, anytime. And if you do it, you will be making the unconscious aspects of yourself more conscious. So effectively, it is shadow work. And you will be learning who you are and how you really feel about things. And really, all it takes is for you to look at your emotions. I've given you a mode for doing emotional literacy, but if you can think of another one, you can do it like that, where you can actually get a nuanced understanding of how you feel about a situation. It's really weirdly difficult to get people to do this exercise. It's really strangely difficult to get people to look at their emotions. I developed the exercise for me. I went back into therapy with depression and realized that I could only articulate 3 or 4 different emotional states. And I think one of them wasn't even an emotional state. It was like, I think I said hungry or tired or horny or something. And it's like, that's the counselor I was working with. It was a very nice, cheerful Irish gentleman. Was laughing at me. He was like, I don't think that is an emotion. Whatever I said, I was like, I don't know, angry, sad, horny. Or maybe it was some, I don't know, whatever it was. But then when so I was like, wow, I'm really numb. I'm really in a state of numbness here. I need to know what I'm feeling. And so I was like, well, we should articulate what we feel. We should use language to describe how we feel. So instead of saying, if you say, I had an argument with my girlfriend and I walked away angry, that has one level of meaning. If you say, I had an argument with my girlfriend and I walked away feeling disappointed, heartbroken, betrayed, defensive, and irritated, and that got mushed into a glob called anger, that has a different level of meaning. Now, if you want your relationship to get better, it's better for you to know, it's a superior strategy for you to know to a nuance exactly how you felt. That's one thing. That's at the external level. But at the internal level, it is better for you to know how you feel. Well, I could end up walking away going, every time I'm in an intimate relationship, I just get really angry in confrontation. Wow, I guess I have a problem. I should probably see a psychologist, because every time I'm faced with confrontation, I get angry. But it's really just, it's just with my girlfriend. So I must have an intimacy issue. And then we spin off into the stratosphere with some next level nonsense where there's something wrong with me and it needs to be fixed. Whereas if I say, when I use the words, I was heartbroken, I felt betrayed, everything else that I said, you have a much more justified palette. You have a much more sane seeming, reasonable seeming emotional response. You're less crazy when you're emotionally literate. Your perception of yourself is that you're less crazy. And you'll see that your emotional responses make sense a lot of the time. When you deny and repress emotions and you go, oh, I'm just angry, then you feed into the cycle of saying, I'm just angry, I'm not to be trusted, my emotions are not to be trusted. The emotional me is a me that I don't like. Let's suppress that emotional me. Let's suppress that emotion. And what happens? The shadow grows. The shadow grows because I'm not looking at myself. Not honestly. I'm not. It's the shadow work, which I can't actually find the reference to Jung actually ever saying that, but it's his concept. The idea of looking at the parts of yourself that you've disavowed and then seeking to integrate them could be said to be a spin-off of some of Freud's ideas of saying whatever you do, make sure you maintain a discipline of rigorous self-honesty. When does it become gendered? When does it become gendered? And is it always gendered in this way? And I'm saying gendered, not sexed, advisedly, because I mean gender and I don't mean sex. Though it could be sex and biology in origin, I suspect much of it is down to gender in this case. Why do people not want to go into Emotionland? They think that their emotions are a nuisance. They think that their emotions are like annoying alien invaders that aren't really part of them. They don't see the emotions as being an intelligent part of themselves that is trying to send them messages that will help them. Because very frequently it doesn't seem to be. Like you'd be like, oh, my emotions are all bad. You know, wow, that's you're feeling a lot of feels and globbing them into the same category there. There's a lot that you're feeling. It can't all be bad. And what does bad mean? What's a bad emotion? It doesn't feel good. It's not tickling me. Well, like as a survival mechanism, how are you supposed to have evolved in very harsh, low resource environments if the only feedback your system gives you is tickling? Some feelings have to feel bad so that you are motivated to stay away from danger and dangerous situations of threat. Yeah, we're not evolved for civilized life yet. Realistically, I don't see how we could adapt and evolve for civilized life. I don't even think it would be inside of 100,000 years. Not a biologist, but I think it takes a long, long time, hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions. So we're in a situation we're not adapted to, where most of our threats are symbolic and they're not physical. It's not saber-toothed tigers that are going to eat you. It's relationships that will end. It's a boss that speaks to you in a disrespectful way. It's a government that teabags you on the daily whilst cackling merrily. When does it become gendered? Well, I've noticed in my work around this that when I'm encouraging women to face their emotions, they get really stuck with anything to do with anger. And the few times I've convinced men to do the exercise, which is very, very few, because there really is just not that much interest in doing it. I've not successfully convinced many men that this is a good use of their time. They don't want to touch any emotion that they see as being related to vulnerability. Why? And this is why I said it's a gendered issue, because we have social constructs and restrictions around what a good woman is, what a womanly woman is, and what a good man, what a manly man is. And in our culture, and in many cultures across the world, it's the same. And we can see the biological roots of this, why it would be this way. Ugliness is like the worst taboo for a woman. Weakness is the worst taboo for a man. Why would that be? Well, I'm saying that it's partly a social construct, but it's rooted in biology. Probably because these are the things that would wipe you out of the gene pool. You won't get to reproduce. If you're weak as a man and without function, then you're not going to get to reproduce. If you're ugly, and remember, ugly here is not, I'm not saying in accordance with modern Western beauty standards. We know beauty standards around the world have been very, very different, are very, very different, and have been very different throughout history. That which would get you deselected, weakness, that which would get that ugliness, that which would get a woman deselected, weakness, that which would get a man deselected. These are big problems. Now, you may be in a long-term relationship. You could be in a non-traditional relationship where the gender roles aren't even like that. You could be anywhere on the sexual spectrum. You're still going to be impacted by these cultural factors, even if you're not impacted biologically. None of us escape culture. If you can understand the words coming out of my mouth right now, you're infected with culture, because culture lives and propagates inside of language and linguistic constructs. So if you can understand me, you can speak English, or you can translate from English to your mother tongue, you have culture in you and you're not free of it. Women hate those emotions, or careful. Women are, in my experience, most likely to reject and disavow emotions related to things that they would consider ugly, given the description of ugly that I've just given you. So number one, anger. Can't be angry. It's really vulgar. This is what women say to me. I'm not saying it. That would be foolish for me to jump on YouTube and say. When women are angry, it's simply ugly. It's repellent to the male mind. When a woman is, I should try it. Well, we should just clip that out and see how quickly I go. Where's Richard Crannon's channel? Oh, he gone. He gone. Yes, women try not to be angry. It's not attractive to men. I like playing with knives. So there's anger, and then I've noticed jealousy. And I think in a way this is almost like a more of a traditionally male response. Jealousy can be seen as ugly, but I think it's filtered as weakness. It's filtered as a weakness amongst women. So I've seen huge issues around accepting that you're angry, and huge issues around accepting jealousy, but nowhere near as much as anger. No woman seems to want to be angry, which is a real shame. And I'll come back to why it is extremely dangerous to have half the population of a culture thinking that they can't feel one of the primary human emotions. Similarly, with men, there's a resistance around any kind of weakness, which is a double bind for doing an emotional literacy exercise. Like, why would I? What am I going to do? Finding out what my emotions are. Why would I want to do that? In the majority of cases, some men know that. Some men are fascinated, like me, would be fascinated by ideas around emotional intelligence, and are naturally interested. And some men recognize they just need it. So the social restrictions are around vulnerability. So if a man is feeling any emotion that could feed back the message you're vulnerable, it tends to get disavowed. Women, it's anger. Secondarily, it would be jealousy. These things get disavowed. Disavowed. Remember our Jungian work? That which is disavowed goes into the shadow, doesn't go away. It grows in the dark. For men, it would be anything that relates to vulnerability. Anything at all. Did you get cheated on? Were you tricked? Were you conned? With anything that doesn't reflect an image of yourself as being a wise, worldly, capable, masculine, effective male in the world, disavowed. That's really tricky, as I'm sure emotionally literate people such as yourselves can imagine. That means we would have half the population of a culture disavowing any and all emotions related to vulnerability. Are any of our emotions related to vulnerability? Let me think. I mean, admitting that you have an emotion beyond anger or happiness is an admission of vulnerability. There are more emotions, guys, than anger and than happiness. You're speaking to a completely emotionally numb guy, so like I know how it is. I know how the thinking can go. These things are important to recognize. Again, sticking with the Jungian theme, I've mentioned it here before, but it bears repeating. Anger that is disavowed and repressed in women can lead to what Jung called animus possession, feelings of vulnerability and of needing help. If they're disavowed in men, can lead to anima possession. So Jung believed that which was pushed away into the shadow would come back and possess the individual. And God knows, something like that seems to happen, and we seem to be living through a time of it right now. So the message I would have is, number one, male or female, or human, whether you've been pushed one way or the other, don't disavow your feelings. Whatever they are, they're yours. Why is it so important to feel anger? If you switch off anger, depression will surely follow. If you switch off anger, your sense of humor will die. It's highly likely your lust will die. You'll lose interest in sex. Things won't be funny. You won't be fun. You won't be spontaneous. You will lose energy. You won't want to go out and walk and dance and train and go to the gym as much, because this is all coming from that good, hot place. Anger is fine. Anger is good. Anger is valid. All emotions, all of them, the worst ones, they're all valid. Anger has specific purposes that keep us alive. It keeps the species going. It keeps us passionate. That's hot-bloodedness. If you want to defend yourself, if you want to defend your boundaries, if you want to defend the boundaries of the people you love, you have to be connected with your anger. There's already people in the comments saying, I'm not angry. I don't have it. I'm never angry. Richard, you don't know me. I'm never, that's your ego talking, okay? You all have anger. You all have sadness. You all have all of the things, as every human being does. The only question is, how are you connecting to that? So in the shadow work, we're supposed to be looking at these things that have been disavowed, working with them and integrating them and accepting them. So how do you do that? Why is that anger such a taboo for men and women in civilized society, but particularly for women? Well, when it's a taboo for men and women, it's because we're not a bunch of, prowling hunter-gatherers that sleep under the stars and poop in the bushes anymore, that on any day could have to fight to the death or starve to death or fall into a ravine and die. Yeah, anger would have hung around in those times and nobody would have batted an eyelid. Once we got civilized, once we moved to arable farming and we were living next to each other and on top of each other, bouts of murderous rage would be catastrophic to the social infrastructure. So we now live, shifting gears slightly from psychology to sociology, we now live de facto in a lifestyle that doesn't really serve you. We're constantly being told how selfish we are and how self-serving we are, but we're not really. We're only really serving avatars of ourselves within a very narrow band. You couldn't live as a day, or you couldn't do a day of your life as as a human being with the civilizing program wiped. If we did the Matrix on you and we took the civilization program out, you wouldn't last a day. You would be nicked. You would be arrested inside of a day, because we're on such a tightrope of what we may or may not do in the civilized world. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's the way it is. You must connect with your anger because that's part of you. You can't reject parts of you. You must connect with your vulnerability because nobody's strong all the time. That's insane to think that. It's insane. It's non-sane. It's not clean. It's not healthy to walk around thinking, I must be strong 24/7. You'll break or you'll die young of heart failure because you just hold it all inside. So animus possession and anima possession are threats that I've spoken about elsewhere, and you probably already heard me talk about that. If we don't describe it as animus possession, we could talk about the tendency towards psychosis. If you're holding in a ton of anger and you're not expressing it, you will start to get anxious, you will start to get depressed, and it will start to emotionally dysregulate you, which will affect your perceptions. And imagine the mental acrobatics one human being has to go through to pretend that they're not feeling a major emotion, a powerful emotion that they're feeling daily, probably oftentimes for completely justified reasons. On the other side of the spectrum, you have problems with guys who will drink too much, they will eat too much, they tend to die younger than women, and they tend to die of heart failure more than women. Could these two things be related? The fact that you're not allowed to say, I'm struggling now, I'm not strong right now, I need a break, I need to stop, I don't feel good, I don't feel strong. I can be that role most of the time, but in order to be that role most of the time, I'm going to have to take a little time out here. We have to have the allowance for that. So who enforces these gender roles around emotions? I don't subscribe to the conspiracy theory from either side of the argument on this one, that it is something that men do to women to suppress them, or that women do to men to emasculate them. I've not seen evidence of that. I think everybody does it. I think culture does it. I think culture is a kind of proto artificial intelligence. It survives through us, outside of us, and it controls us. Men and women, old and young, pious, impious, married, unmarried, involved, not involved, from multiple religions, from multiple backgrounds, will tell women, will coerce women to not being angry. It's covert. It's in the speech. It's in the assumption. It's in the linguistics. Same thing for men. It's not just women that tell men that they aren't allowed to express vulnerable emotions. Everybody does it. Men do it. Boys do it. Older men do it. Younger men do it. Married men do it. Unmarried men do it. Unmarried women do it. Married women do it. Everybody does it. It's a hive mind effect, as so many of our allegedly individual psychological problems are. They're not really individual problems, and they're not really psychological in the sense that classic psychology would have us believe, unless the psychologist in question really deeply believes in systems thinking and has a pretty strong background in sociology as well as psychology. A lot of these things, they're just, I mean, I don't even know if some of these things you could say are even enforced. Because say if I wanted to enforce the idea on men that they have to be strong all the time, that would mean that Richard, with intent and will, goes out and puts people in their place and says, "Don't cry, boys, don't cry. Be a man. Do your job." I just watched the video actually on Instagram. I was trying to put Instagram was so distracting. I was trying to post something, and there's a 17-year-old kid, and he just found out that his girlfriend, he's been looking after two kids, and he believes he's the father, and then he found out he wasn't the father, and he's weeping, and his own mother drags him on live TV. He tries to leave, and she drags him to one side, and she says, "You be a man. If you want those kids to be your kids, then they're your kids. You be a man." And I was like, "So, mummy, are you saying if I decode the message that you're offering to your son, him being a man would be doing something that he doesn't want to do and has no business doing, and would mean removing the opportunity for him to have his own children? He's 17. Is being a man looking after somebody's kids that have been imposed on him through deceit? I don't see that as being a man, but some people really do. Similarly, you get these crazy messages delivered to women, like, you know, if you were a good woman, you would do this. You would put up with abuse. You would be loyal to a man who's abused you or exploited you or started a second family and he's got kids with someone. You just be a good woman. You be a good wife. You be a good Christian. Be a good Muslim. Be a good Jew. Be a good Hindu. Be a good Buddhist. Be a good whatever. And just put up with it. And I'm like, hey, man, maybe Terence McKenna was right when he said, culture is not your friend. And Zizek was also right when he said, in a similar line of thinking, this is ideology, pure ideology. So we need to think about these things. I'm working more on this overcoming codependency course called Summoning the Self. And I got to the section a few days ago because I'm reviewing each section and developing each section, where I'm talking about the cultural factors that induce codependency. Because there are cultural factors that induce codependency. We have to acknowledge these things. Sometimes it's not your shadow that you have to acknowledge. It's a cultural shadow. It's a collective shadow. We, or it, the culture, likes women just in there. We, the hive mind, AI, the culture, likes men just there. Don't step outside of it. Just right there. Stay there. Don't move. Just be that. How long for? Just be it. But when do I stop? When you're dead. Okay, you just don't stop. Just keep holding that. It's not workable. That's not sustainable. That word that we hear all the time now. It's a good word. We should be trying to be sustainable. It's perfectly rational and sane as human beings on a planet of limited resources to concern ourselves with sustainability. As above, so below. If we're going to try and build a better society, and I hope that we haven't lost our optimism for doing that, I hope we haven't had our spirits broken just yet, we're also going to have to start with environmental hygiene and personal hygiene and emotional hygiene. And we're going to have to challenge some of these old ways of thinking that came from generations of highly traumatized people who were operating from shock. Sometimes I really think people carry on nasty traditions that they know in the full knowledge that it hurts even their own children, just because they had to bear it. Like, you have to do this. Why? Well, because I did. Well, I don't live in your generation. I don't give a fuck. You just do the same dumb thing that is guaranteed to hurt you that I did. Because I can't stand to see that you're free in ways that I wasn't. So what's the reason? The reason is fuck you. Get on with it. So there you go. All right. I discipline my verbal diarrhea a little bit. There's 26 minutes for you. So now I'll take some questions. Please make them one sentence long. Have them end in a question mark. I'm such a rigid traditionalist. And I'll pop them on the screen. So yeah, somebody here is mentioning giving the child the belt. I went to a boarding school when I was a kid at the tail end of when you could hit kids. So I was hit at boarding school by adult male strangers, which is so weird to me now. Dudes my age would just strike 11-year-olds in the head with their hands. People didn't even know. Not that knowing a kid makes a difference, but like, that's wild, man. What did you do at work today? Oh, I struck some children in the cranium. How did you do that? Oh, I used my man-sized hands to do that. Oh, that's good. That will teach them all of the things that they need to grow into, just healthy, nice human beings. And actually, around that time, I was at boarding school in Somerset. It wasn't at my school, but a boarding school nearby. Somebody brought a shotgun in and blasted one of the teachers for it. It's a farming area, Somerset. It was rich farmers. I was at school. I'm not from there. God knows why my parents sent me there. So I was surrounded by rich farmers, and some rich farmer's kid brought in a shotgun one day and did one of his teachers in for smacking him all the time. Richard, why anger though? Isn't anger a secondary emotion? No. Who told you that? Where have you got the idea that anger is a secondary emotion? And why, when you say why anger though, do you mean why is anger the one that women struggle with for the reasons I gave? If you're asking me why is anger so important, because it's absolutely just primal to who you are. We are angry creatures, like it or not. We function on anger. We function through an aggressive drive. Don't, please, for the love of all that's holy, try and tell yourself another story. You will get very sick and you'll be a weird hypocrite. You'll be a weird posturing hypocrite. I can't just ask you to accept what I'm saying. If it's totally contrary to your belief system, just drop it and just ignore what I'm saying. But for those of you who can hear me, please don't run from anger. You will be so sick and so miserable. It's really not good. You'll be physically sick. Jen Dowden says, aware of Edward Bernays' social engineering, indoctrination associated with religious institutions, media, and porn. I am not aware of Edward Bernays having anything to do with porn or systemic sexual violence. I am aware of him developing the concept of public relations and of being a social engineer, of course. I too have watched the Adam Curtis documentary Century of the Self, and watching Freud's nephew take the tools and the concepts put together by Freud and use it in that way was really disturbing. It was a truly nasty, irresponsible, and an extremely destructive thing to do. And Edward Bernays was many things, but not a stupid man. And there's no way he couldn't have known what he was doing. It's a real shame. It's a real shame because it really has fundamentally altered the way in which we live. It altered everything. It's not just how we buy. It's how we do politics. It's how we do relationships. It's how we do love. It's how we self-soothe. It's everything. It's in everything. Naughty, naughty, naughty Edward. Jemima says, if it's pushed really deep down, can we still recognize that it is anger? What I recommend is that you do the emotional literacy exercise, because if we've gotten very, very out of touch with our emotions for years as a coping strategy, getting back in touch with them is can be really difficult and potentially traumatic. So you need a safe way of doing it. There's a free tutorial. It's an easy tutorial. It's over on Fortress Mental Health. If you put into the YouTube search bar Fortress Mental Health Emotional Literacy, there's like an 11-minute video where I explain exactly what you need to do. Don't go more complex than the exercise that's given. It will seem too simple, but run it every day for 30 days and you'll be in a much, much stronger position, I promise you. Jared asks, I'm wondering what the effects of creativity and imagination, things like art, on helping opening up to repressed emotions. It can help. Your repressed emotions and your suffering can make your artwork better. It can make writing better. It can make music better. It can damn sure make visual artwork better. But don't suffer just to be better artists. I wouldn't hold much stock in the idea that the art will be informed by repressed emotions. The art will be guided by repressed emotions, but doing artwork is unlikely to end up being valid shadow work without therapy as well. So there is art therapy, which is great, but don't think that just by doing your art or your writing, you're doing art therapy. You actually need an art therapist who knows what they're doing to guide you through that. What do you do with your anger? How do you handle it? Says Desiree. The same as I would any emotion. I acknowledge it. I value it. I know that it's communication. These are all things that you're taught through doing the emotional literacy exercise. I listen to it. Okay. What? Like, what are you trying to tell me? What do you want from me? What do I need to be doing? How am I failing to protect myself? What boundaries am I allowing to be transgressed right now? What is it that I should be looking at that I don't want to look at? These are the questions I ask when anger comes up. And it's always that. It's always that. Could not anger be a choice and in that have a purpose and meaning to have any effect? Could not anger be a choice? Could not anger be a choice? And in that, dude, that's too poetic. You've got a poetic writing style, or you've been auto-corrected. Could not anger be a choice, and in that have a purpose and meaning to have any effect? It's evocative, but I don't know what you're saying. I'm sorry. I don't want to bounce off that one. I don't really know what you're saying. But I love the phrase. Could not anger be a choice? So may it be as it was in the beginning, forever and ever. Amen. Rewrite it and I'll have another go, mate. The shadow. How can you stay coherent to your values when your own sex drive makes you go against them? Well, we are not animals. We have free choice. We left the Garden of Eden a while ago. I think you missed a memo. It was the snake's fault, or it was Eve's fault, or it was the fruit's fault, or it was Adam's fault, or it was God's fault, or it was the wall's fault. Somebody's to blame. But yeah, we left the garden a while ago, and you have free will. You have the capacity to override your baser drives. That's why you focus on your values, so that, one reason for writing down your values and saying what you will tolerate and what you won't tolerate is so that you won't be lured by a little snake in the grass saying, giving you the devil on your shoulder. In Islam, I think it's the wasa wasa, wasa 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 wasa, whispering to you, telling you to do something you shouldn't do. Eat the fruit, it'll be delicious. Eat it. Oh, go on. Just a little taste. Just suck it. Suck it. I think I'm getting tired now. So yeah, stick to your values, and just like, part of being an adult and a human being is delaying gratification and making good choices that are in accordance with your values. But it is a struggle. I mean, if it wasn't a struggle, there'd be no point. Just be robots. Eat it. Go on. Just taste it. The snake was Irish, and that's why she couldn't resist him. Oh, go on. Just a little taste. Okay. Hit me with a question, please, guys. I have one sentence or a question. Then look. UG Rose says, "Oh God." Yeah, it's that time of night here. It's a little bit late here. Question. So Shaina, why do you think people behave so differently on different social media platforms? Twitter versus Instagram, for example. Oh, mate, I'm made up that you asked me that question. But if I was going to answer that, it would be another 45 minutes in another direction. And it's such a good question. I actually was thinking about defending a friend of mine today. And he behaves badly on social media. It's a guy I work with. And I've told him, and other people have told him. And it's like, I don't have to defend him. He's not asked me to defend him. It was just like an intellectual, I had something else to do. I was actually moving from one place to another, and I wanted to just think about something whilst I was moving bags around, because this is such a waste of time. And so I put myself to this, I was like, how to do that? And I was like, well, there is an argument. Let me keep this brief. Let's do another video on this, but we keep it brief. And this is, I can make this argument work. I could have been a lawyer. I can make this work. That Twitter trains you. If you watch there was a Sam Vaknin interview that went like viral where we were talking about social media. It was shot by Richard Willett, and it's the famous one. If you look at Sam Vaknin's social media toxicity that we then took clips for and used in the thing for Plugged In, he was talking about how the apps themselves, the platforms themselves, train you to behave in a certain way. And I can tell, let me leave it at this. And if you like it, post in the comments, I'll do a video on it. I can put the case to you that Twitter trains people to be narcissistic, and that in fact, it won't accept anything else. We have new data, by the way, folks, that says if we're going to slam social media platforms, YouTube is not a bad platform to use. There's new research that's out that says of all the platforms, YouTube is the least toxic and toxifying. And I was asked in an interview last night, I'm helping a charity based in Liverpool to get young doctors into medicine. And these, thanks, Shaina. I'll answer the full thing on another video, because it's such a good question and so relevant to the times we're living in, because my God, it's tearing the world apart. Now, what did they ask me? Oh yeah, they said, why do you think YouTube isn't as damaging as the other platforms? And I was supposed to read their questions before the interview, and I just didn't have time yesterday. So he hit me on the fly with that. And I came up with a really good, I was like, oh, I don't know. I think I'm going to have to dodge it. I went, no, I've actually got an answer for that. It doesn't reward it. It doesn't reward assholery. You can't be an asshole on YouTube. I've paid people, and myself and Pierre XO, who I work with, we've sat in meetings trying to figure out the YouTube algorithm. I have many criticisms of YouTube as far as free speech goes, but as far as maintaining a quality of content, it's really good. Like it's not perfect. Nobody said it's perfect, but you can be a totally obnoxious bellend on Twitter and be 100% rewarded for that. Followers, likes, whatever. Instagram, we all know, you can generate huge followings by taking pictures of your ass and a thong in different luxurious locations. Like that's a thing. That's a job for people. YouTube doesn't work like that. It won't tolerate it. So YouTube makes it. We don't know how the YouTube algorithm works to a nicety, but we know if you look at the thumbnail and you look at the title, and the thumbnail and the title match the content of the video, and the content of the video is something that is of interest now and it has nutrition, they have ways of monitoring that. Where who's clicking through, when we show them, it's an impression, how many click through, when they click through, how long do they stay, and then do they leave comments? So you really help me by watching me on YouTube. I have a really long retention rate. I can make people stay for longer than most people can. And I also induce people to write comments. So I get rewarded on YouTube for that. So could I jump on YouTube and just be like, fucking, just screaming and ranting and saying I hate people? I could. Well, for one, they would delete my channel if it was, well, you guys already know. They'll delete the videos, they'll send you a warning, then they'll delete the channel. But they will not put you in the recommended. Now, most of the stuff that you guys watch now on YouTube, because it's not YouTube 2021, it's not YouTube 2012, is because it comes up in your suggested videos on the top right-hand corner. And so YouTube actually has its own quality control. You're rewarded for thinking about your work. And there's also the guts of YouTube. If you're a YouTube content maker, the way YouTube interacts with you, it's very pushy. It's way pushier than Instagram, Facebook, Twitter just lets you do what you want. YouTube's like, so what's the video length? And have you thought about putting a little thumbnail on this? And have you checked your title? And it pushes you. And then it gives you feedback. It'll say, that video didn't do so good. The last video that you did that was over here did 62% better. It gives you measurable numbers that really encourage you to do better. So, but let's talk about Twitter. It's a real problem. I'm not going to claim it's by design. I don't believe it's by design. I think it's a human software fault, and that's fallen prey to Twitter. But I can actually present a case that what I'm going to say is, if you're not narcissistic on Twitter, don't be there. There's no point. You're either going to get heartbroken or completely ignored. And I don't use it. I've never seen the point. Remember when people told me about Twitter, I was like, what do you do? Well, you just write a sentence. I'm like a Facebook status update. You've taken one of the most boring elements of Facebook. Like how? I'm astonished that it's a thing. I'm astonished that people go and check their Twitter feeds. I'm like, I could think of nothing worse. At least with YouTube, if you train YouTube, you can just have mini essays that educate you all day long on the subjects you love the most. That's what YouTube can be. It's can't stand Twitter, says Patsy. No, me neither. All right, hit me with another. Twitter is good for leaving links to videos that you want certain people to see. Interesting point. Is there any benefit in reading previous journal entries, says Mary Lee? Yeah, for sure. This is why they take, careful now. If you're very into like fitness training and strength training, and you go with an instructor, they will insist on progress pictures, because it is very hard for us to subjectively know what our progress is. Our brains just don't map for that. They just, you'd be like, oh, I think I'm the same. I don't know. When you journal, I mean, I've had journaling experiences. I remember back in 2009 just being gobsmacked. Like I literally thought I'd had so much therapeutic process in such a short period of time that I thought somebody had broken into my laptop and written journal entries for me because I was such a mess when I started, but I didn't know. I didn't know how sick I was. I had no idea what a mess I was. And then you see these journal entries over months, and it's like, oh, wow, this actually works. I can see myself becoming more cogent, more coherent. And so, yeah, it's great from that point of view. It's great for you to know you will go back and look at old journal entries and go, oh, who was I then? Oh, I think I used to believe XYZ. And then you're like, wow, how did I walk around holding that belief in my head? That's really good for you. That's good for you to know. So I wouldn't linger on it. Today is more important. Tomorrow is more important than that. But it's good to know where you've come from. It's good to see the progress that you've made and to be able to give yourself a little pat on the head and be like, yeah, man, I did a hard thing and I did it over and over and over again. It's like doing the emotional literacy exercise. It takes a degree of discipline. It takes motivation. It takes courage, because you don't know what's going to come up. You're jumping into the unknown, and really, with journaling and with the emotional literacy work, you're building a bridge between you and the unconscious. The vast, unlimited, dark unconscious. It's pretty scary at first. You get used to it and you form a relationship with it, but that's what you should do. We can't, again, sustainability, we can't all walk around with no relationship with our own unconscious, which is what we have right now. No shamans, no dreamcasters, no dreamcasting, no myths that allow us to understand the symbology of the unconscious and to elevate it to a meaningful place. We're just like, no unconscious, no, none. That's what you are. No, I'm a robot that consumes. I consume and have sex in various colors that can be fed into a supercomputer algorithm and fed to political campaigns. That's who I am. The machine reduces us to avatars, but we also try to reduce ourselves to avatars when we are living in a purely conscious mindset. It's very sick because we're losing, well, we sleep a third of our lives, right? I don't think we're a third unconscious. I think we're more because I suspect, like many do, that we're dreaming the whole time. I'm not saying this is a dream. I mean, this might be a dream. What I'm saying is we can have a conscious interaction, but my dreams might still be forming. It's just that when I sleep, there's no other distraction. I turn inward and I'm tuning into that channel. I'm tuning into that movie, but that movie probably runs all the time. I would say that what we are is 99% unconscious and 1% conscious, or more. More than 99%. So us walking around and going, oh, we're just conscious beings. I'm like, that's really sick. That's really sick. You've got to let the absurdity, the mysticism, the spirituality, the religiosity, and the sheer weirdness of the dream world in. It has to have a place, or we will die. We will die spiritually. We will die emotionally. We will die psychologically, as surely and as predictably as people who are deprived of sleep will die. What happens with people who are deprived of sleep? They go crazy. They go psychotic within mere days, 48 hours. I've done it from drugs and when I was younger. And you start hearing things, you start seeing things, you see ghosts, you hear voices in your head. 48 hours of no sleep, you'll hear stuff. 72 hours of no sleep, you'll see stuff. I've never gone further than that, but you disintegrate. We need the unconscious. We really, really, really need it. My God. Bring it back, man. Hey, says Alexandra, have you read about the new research on lucid dreaming? Psychologists engaging lucid dreamers unconscious? I have not. That sounds interesting, though. Please post a link afterwards in the comments and we'll all have a little look at that. Caterini. How seriously must the NPD BPD threat of harm be taken? Children involved? This sounds to me like a question for you to be taking to the police. which I am not. Nobody on YouTube is going to be able to answer this for you, and this really isn't the right place for you to bring this question. Go straight to the police. If you think your children or your safety is in danger, take it, log everything, all the phone calls, all the messages, any threats. Try and record threatening messages if you can. Take it to the police, get a crime number, and the police might, I don't know what country you're in, they might not jump out their skin to help you straight away because they get a lot of these claims. But if it continues and you keep telling them, they'll do something about it. Mind Valley is currently promoting a lucid dreaming course for subconscious access, says Ellen. Do you know that I used to train right opposite Mind Valley in Kuala Lumpur, in Bangsar Valley? So whenever I was on the treadmill, I'd look straight out at Mind Valley. I've been there a couple of times for seminars. They produce some good content. I'll have a look at that lucid dreaming. That's really interesting. If you're not into lucid dreaming, trying to make yourself do it through techniques is not good, in my opinion. Interesting. I've not heard that before. But that's an interesting perspective. Question, says Lukasz. Hi, Richard. Hello, Lukasz. Does NLP can turn someone who is not a narcissist into a narcissist? Can a narcissist install his own narcissistic attitude, style of communication in people through NLP? Well, it depends on what you mean by NLP. I mean, like, can a 1970s self-help phenomena cobbled together, borrowed from multiple disciplines, semi-system, but not quite a system, of mishmashed ideas, turn somebody who's neurotypical into having a full-blown rare psychiatric disorder? No, unless your question is like they were living inside of an NLP cult and abused or something over years. But no, just the ideas itself absolutely can't do that. If somebody has latent traits and they get very deep into that system or systems like it, there are systems that have a similar sort of a vibe to it. Yeah, they could definitely get sicker. They could for certain sure get sicker. Sometimes the way NLP is taught is it's taught narcissistically, but that's not special. Sometimes the way psychoanalytic theory is taught, it's taught narcissistically. Sometimes CBT is taught narcissistically. Really depends on the context and the intent. Can a narcissist install his own narcissistic attitudes in people through NLP? Now, you can install beliefs. You can influence people's beliefs and attitudes through traditional neurolinguistic programming techniques, for sure. But that's only that. Don't get spooky. It's only the same as saying, like, Jesus and the Buddha used parables to tell stories. Were they influencing human behavior? Well, they were influencing perception. So, yeah. Was it NLP? Well, NLP didn't exist then. Were they using NLP principles? If we're going to be facetious, yeah. But anybody who speaks, especially if they speak publicly, uses NLP principles. It's a naive question. It assumes there's this thing that's separate and powerful that's called NLP, and it can have an effect on people that would. It's like, I don't know. It's not that powerful at all. It's a powerful enough tool if you commit to it, but it's not that powerful. And influencing people's ideas and beliefs. There are people with narcissism out there who do that every day. They've never been to an NLP course. They wouldn't need to go to an NLP course. So is it the NLP that's doing it? you know, I guess the answer to your first question, if you wanted to just a straight no, yes, it would be no. And the answer to your second question would be yes. But think beyond the surface. Think like multi-layered. Get a high definition view of exactly what our terms are. What is a narcissist? What is NLP? What is the influencing of attitudes and ideas? Okay. Please answer Rachel's question. Please copy and paste Rachel's question. Is self-validation a good or a bad thing? I don't know. I mean, depends on what you mean by self-validation. Like, you could do it in a way that was good. You could do it in a way that was bad. So do it in a way that's good, and it will be all right. Start giving really specious answers now. It's neither good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Only Swaki Malipons. Do you do your videos certain days of the week? I like your lives, but many times I miss them. No, I do them at random. I really should do them on certain days of the week. Where's Rachel's question? You've got me curious now. UG Rose says, please hit the like, folks. That's good. Thanks, UG. Okay. Faye says, you fucking crack me up, bud. You're a boss, you are, Faye. Thanks for that, mate. You're a boss, Faye. I've always said so. Hiroshi says, question, what do you think we can do to help our close friends or boyfriends with depression? Should I give that person love and affection or just leave them be for a while? Tricky one, mate. I mean, depression is effectively a kind of umbrella term for a pretty broad spectrum of problems. People got the impression from me because of years ago I said there's no biological source to depression. They thought I was saying depression isn't real or it doesn't affect human biology. Oh, I know that it's real, and I know it affects biology because I've struggled with depression over the years, and it's awful. But it's not just one thing. It can be different manifestations, and it can be from different causes. And given that it's such a complicated issue, and given that you're not really, well, you're not qualified to help with it, what can we do? You go on to ask, should I give that person love? Whatever the situation is, when we're talking about psychology and having an intervention with somebody, generally speaking, you'll find me anti-intervention, to the point where I have had friends who complain that I don't intervene with other friends when they clearly have mental health issues. But I have no regrets. I developed a philosophy around that like, unless somebody asks me for help, I'm not offering it, because I'm not God, and I don't know what effect it could have on them. I don't even know what effect I can have on somebody when they ask me for help, for God's sake. So you said, should I give that person love? And I would be like, let's transfer this whole conversation to being one about love. If by love you mean acceptance and support, and you hold as sacrosanct the relationship itself, then yes, absolutely, above all else. What do I mean specifically? If we could put some nuance to that, the way that I do it, I've got friends and family members who I know are going through mental health issues, but ask them. I mean, today I was walking with Pierre. Some of you watch me and Pierre on Untitled Question, and it's the first time I ever psychoanalyzed anything he'd ever said, and he laughed, and it was He'd not asked me, and I was like, "Oh, I'm really sorry you didn't ask me to do that, but does that, does it offer you some insight?" He was, "Oh yeah, it does, but I've never done it before. It's not my bag." Because what I can offer him, or any of my friends, I've got friends in the UK who've got trouble at the moment, family members, so on, is the top level of what I can offer them is my presence and is my acceptance. So my ego isn't really offering them. It's the me that's me to them that offers them something. And if my friends and family get the idea in their heads that I'm going to start psychoanalyzing them and telling them what to do, that will damage that. In my head, it's like a golden portal, a fragile gold bridge between two humans. And if I damage that, I've really fucked it up. I've really fucked it up. And telling people how to live and what to do, and you've not said that you want to tell them how to live. You're saying I want to help them with depression. But if somebody's struggling mentally and they haven't asked you for help and you offer it, what they'll hear is that you're telling them what to do. So I just don't do it. I just show up, and I'm not all psychology about it. I'm just a dickhead. I'll just show up as normal and make jokes about farts or something, because it's my presence that makes a difference. That's the golden bridge. That's what we need to hold as sacrosanct, not anything I can say to them. Because who knows if they don't want to hear it, and I say it to them, and they're like, "Oh, fuck off, Richie. Just because you fucking talk on YouTube, you can think you can tell your mates what to do." So let's keep it about love. Yes, you should love them. Yes, you should accept them. Keep that line of communication open. Depression's tough. I mean, even for qualified clinicians, it's not a straightforward nut to crack, and it's hard for the person experiencing it. But if they know that you're there, even if they don't have the resourcefulness to really be grateful and gracious, when they come out of the depression, they will remember that you were there, and that means a lot. You asked then the final question: should I offer them love and affection, or just leave them be for a while? Let them say. Let them dictate what their will is. Let's hold each other's will as sacrosanct. Let's respect each other's space. It's a good general principle to have. What do they want? You can ask the question, you can be like, "I see that you're in pain. Is it helping you for me to be here? Or would you prefer to be on your own? Would you prefer to be just tell me. You tell me. What do you need? I won't talk. I'll listen for a bit. I won't be all yang. I'll be all yin. Go on, you tell me. What do you need? You big depressed balloon." And then just see what they say. At least then they know that you really care. The other issue with like trying to sort of help people, apart from it feeling like oh, you're trying to tell me how to live, which generates resentment, is I had a really good point then. It's flown away. Give me a moment. Oh yeah. It could be perceived that you have an agenda, and it's really such a bummer. Like when you're sad and you just get the impression that what the person's telling you is like, "Hey, it's really not convenient for me that you feel this way because I'm not enjoying your depression. So I really just want you to cheer up." And you might not mean that. Some people do. Some people absolutely mean that when they want to do an intervention. It's for your good. No, it's for your good. You might not mean that, but you're at risk. That's what the person would hear. So I'm really, I have a certain attitude and a certain demeanor when I'm doing YouTube videos. Some of it is just role play. It's like a character that I think is going to most effectively get my message across. But you could very easily assume you take that character and you extrapolate it forwards, and you'd be like, "Oh, well, this is the guy who's just going to be really confrontational and just land hard truths on people." In my coaching, I'm pretty delicate because I see it as bomb disposal. I've always had that image in my mind. It's like, you know, is it the red or the green wire? And if I hit the wrong one in the wrong way, it could really be disastrous. Because I've sat in on other people's therapy and counseling sessions, and I've watched therapists and counselors make mistakes that would just stun you. You would think I was making it up for the point of telling a crazy anecdote. And you can really screw people up because it's vulnerability. I remain clothed. You get naked. You know, it's not. And you could say, oh, we'll do a style of psychology where both of you are naked. That doesn't help. That doesn't help. You have to be vulnerable. I'm afraid I have to stay invulnerable. It's a weird asymmetric dynamic from the jump, and it can be really triggering. It can be really difficult for people. So you respect that. You say, thank you. I'm grateful that you've shown me the trust to be vulnerable. Now that you are being vulnerable, I don't need to be harsh and rough because I'm inside the, I've already taken the invitation into the inner space. Everything I do with delicacy from vulnerability and rapport will have huge effect. So you don't need to go in with a hammer. You don't need to yell at people and stuff like that. If you're actually inside their vulnerable space, if they're really being vulnerable and open, and they trust you, which means you have to remain in a sort of a gentle, careful, respectful state, anything you say is going to have the most impact. Like, I know this is your house, but you said you didn't like the dark. The curtains are closed. Should we open them? We don't have to. Maybe we could open them a little. And then if they do, to extend the metaphor, there's a little bit of light in the room where before there was none. And you did your job. And that's great. So yeah, as a friend or a girlfriend, I would say just be there and ask them, what do you need? What would help? And just keep the delicate, frail golden bridge that's ruined so easily. So easily. I'm so glad that you're talking about anger today, says Fiji Glove, and how it's important to acknowledge it. You're right, it will make you sick if you just hold it all in. It's true. It's true. Question, says Ace Hatake. Hi, Rich. What's the best way to deal with this physiological reaction to negative emotion, although one is rational and conscious of them? Anxiety is still causing stomach pain. Yeah, it's actually something that we brought up on on the Summoning the Self forum today. In psychoanalytic theory, I believe that's called somatization, where a mental or emotional stress is brought into the body. What's the best way of dealing with it? Of negative emotion, although one is rational and conscious of them. Your rationality may be counterintuitively creating a structure internally that's making the anxiety worse. There are parts of us that respond to reason and rationality, and there are parts of us that only respond to symbols. There are parts of us that only respond to emotional appeals, and there are parts of us that only respond to safety and danger, love and hate. So I don't know what's causing your anxiety, you see, but whatever strategy you've developed, I don't think, well, let's assume it's wrong because it's hurting you. You're getting stomach pain from the anxiety. So the way, I nearly ended it. I was just trying to remove your comment. Bloody hell, I nearly ended the stream. I hit the wrong buttons. I better finish soon. So the way in which you're already doing it isn't working, and you've been rational, good. Maybe that's not going to be the thing that fixes it, because we work with structures and emotions and cognitions that repeated again and again. They have a structure. You can imagine it as like a physical structure or a piece of an engine, and it's misfiring because it's not giving you the result that you want it to. So you're still anxious, and you're so anxious that it's somatized. It's in the stomach. I was actually relating a story myself today on the Summoning the Self about that exact same thing. Anxiety that was in my stomach, and it made me feel like throwing up. I'm not a throwy uppy person. I have a really strong stomach. Don't get nauseous, never want to throw up, but I was pushing outside of my own codependent boundaries, and it made me physically feel very sick. So first of all, I would want to know, if we were coaching, I'd be like, is it just anxiety? Is it actually anxiety? Because people glob, especially when we're emotionally not that literate. We can glob. We can be like, well, I'm sad, I'm frightened, I'm irritated, I'm disappointed, and I feel like it's a tense feeling and it makes me want to run, or it makes me feel like I'm nervous. What do we call that? Well, it's anxiety, right? Yes, but behind the anxiety, there are other emotions there as well that might need looking at. There's the anxiety that comes when there's actually an external factor in our lives that we should be doing something about. We're not. We're stuck in a relationship that we shouldn't be in. We should have left it 2 years ago, and we've just put off the uncomfortable conversation. We're in a job that we hate. We have a relationship with a family member that's out of whack or whatever. And there's actually something external that you need to do something about, and you're not doing it. Then you have the anxiety that can come from repressed emotions. So in number one, you have to make this assessment, because I'm not with you. Sorry. In number one, you have to do the thing. You have to go out into the world and make a change and be extremely courageous. And it will take a lot of courage, because you're a reasonable, rational human being, and you've put off this decision for years. So it must be terrifying for you. Sorry about that. This will suck. But once you've done it, it's done. If that's the issue. If it's repressed emotion, you've got to be working on your emotional literacy. It's good being up in the crown chakra and thinking about stuff, but if you're there all the time, you just become emotionally constipated, and that isn't good. You've got to be down in the heart chakra and in the solar plexus as well. We have to digest emotions. We process and digest emotions. If they're not digested effectively, we have the world that we're living in today. Undigested emotions that are making people go completely insane, making people completely psychotic. They are tilting at windmills now. I think the world we live in now is a world of Don Quixotes tilting at windmills. They see enemies everywhere, enemies on every corner, because they've not slept, as in the metaphor I gave you before. They're not in touch with the unconscious. We've lost it. The unconscious is shit. You don't touch it. Useless. Okay, well, you're going to get really sick, and then you're going to die. We don't process our emotions, which is the best bridge to the unconscious that we have. You're going to get sick, and then you're going to die. And psychosis is the end result. Walking around in like a hellscape. Demons everywhere, demons and enemies everywhere. Just getting stuffier and stuffier and stuffier with undigested emotion, completely out of touch with our bodies, completely out of touch with our emotional bodies, our feelings, our unconscious, our humanity itself. That's what we are. We're not these rational avatar consumer beings that can justify what they do. We're just weird creatures who make magic fetishes out of twigs and bits of hair, and then hang them from a tree, and then say magic words around them and do a little dance. And that it's kind of embarrassing, really, but that is what we are. That's what we're evolved for. We're not more intelligent in terms of our intellect. We're not more evolved than we were 15, 25, 35,000 years ago. That's what we've been doing, by the way. Hanging fetishes from trees and blowing on them and claiming that this gives us access to the moon, and then I don't know, go and talk to the moon god in your sleep. Well, you can't, but old Og face over there, Og face is your mate. You're Og, he's Og. He can do it in his dreams. So you give him beads in exchange for that's what we are. And you say that's ridiculous. And I'm like, well, you can see all those behaviors in modern man, in modern woman, playing out still. We're fetishistic, magical creatures that dwell in the unconscious. Man and his symbols. I believe a man called Carl Jung wrote a book called something like that. So we have to have the capacity to go there. And if we're not, we get really, really sick. So you've got external factors that you might need to take action and do something about. Repressed emotion that you're just not addressing, and only emotional literacy will address. And then this third concept, which is not well defined by me, but I always think of the eye of Sauron, which is unfortunate. Maybe it should be the eye of Horus. There's an all-seeing eye. Horus was sometimes manifested as a hawk. And the all-seeing eye that we have in the old Illuminati and on the dollar bills and all that, that's what the eye of Horus. It could be good, it could be bad. It's neither really good. It wasn't like a thing. Egyptians weren't going, is it good, is it bad? That's us. It's a magical all-seeing eye. And to the Egyptians, eyes didn't receive light. They shot light out. So when you see in ancient Egypt, you're seeing like a torch. So there's darkness on either side of my peripheral vision. And then my eyes fire, because I'm a soul trapped in a flesh body, and I'm a soul that's made of light. This is Egyptian cosmology. It's pretty cool. And some of my light escapes through my eyes, which is why the eyes are so important. It's the gateway to the soul, because that's how I'm lighting the world right now. I'm lighting up the world with my eye lasers. So let's say it's the eye of Horus idea. There is your unconscious is watching you as an observer. This is just my made up thing. There's no research or validity to this. This is Richard's made up thing. The eye of Horus model of the unconscious. It watches you, it judges you, and the feelings and impulses that you get to do things are based on its judgment of you and your actions. So it's like the perpetual judgment every day. And in Egyptian mythology, if your soul wasn't as light as a feather at the end of your life, somebody would come along and smack you on the bottom and send you to the dark place. So what's happening with anxiety? In this model, the unconscious is looking at how you're living your life and saying, this life sucks. The way you're living sucks. We don't want you to live the next 5 years the way you lived the last 5 years. Please stop. What's anxiety? Anxiety is a somatically felt experience that tells us to move or hide or do something. It's a do something feeling. It's agitation. Depression is do nothing. Stay there. How long for? Just stay. And if you try and move around, the mighty hand of the Arton comes down and squashes you into the couch and says, don't move. You just stay. It's a depression. Impression, depression, impression, depression. The hand is pushing you down. Big, dark hand pushes you down and crushes you. That's how it feels somatically if you've struggled with depression, right? So anxiety is a signal that's saying do something, do something, do something. And it comes, I'm claiming that the unconscious, this eye, if you imagine like an all-seeing eye, it's watching you and it's feeding back. And anxiety can be, so this is option 3, anxiety can be a foot in the ass that is saying to you, you need to sort your fucking life out. You can't live like this. Stop. The way you eat, the way you sleep, who you're hanging around with, the TV you're consuming, the lifestyle, everything, stop. So there are some options for you, sir, and for anybody watching this to interpret your anxiety and to, maybe it's a combination of all 3. And then from there, find some way of alleviating it, but without focusing on the thing itself, which is what like a lot of modern psychology does. It goes, oh, you have anxiety. So you individually, you're holding anxiety. There's a virus in your body called anxiety. That's the problem. Let's kill anxiety. No more problem. Take some anti-anxiety meds. Fixed. To say that it's a bit reductionist and a bit primitive would be kind. It's positively fucking barbaric. And it suggests that there's something fundamentally wrong with human beings. Like we're not evolved to have feelings and that our feelings are wrong in some way. That anxiety is bad. How do I know anxiety is bad? Maybe I and you are evolved to have anxiety because we're the descendants of the Ugg and Og that ran away when the band of predators came. And a bunch of other people with no anxiety were like, chill out, dude, everything's going to be okay. And they got fucking eaten out of the gene pool. When you hate your neurosis, when you hate your hypervigilance, when you hate your anxiety, you're disrespecting your biological heritage, really, quite frankly. That's how we're the ones that were anxious. We ran. And you hate your anger. We're the ones that fought. We bashed in people's heads, and our DNA is still here. The people who are like, I have no anger, I can't do this. Well, they were psychologically healthier by today's standards, but they're also historically deader. I liked it. I made myself laugh. It's a t-shirt. You're psychologically healthier, but historically an awful lot fucking deader. They didn't make it. They didn't make it on this spaceship, this big spaceship that's flying wherever it is, spaceship Earth. They didn't make it. So don't hate it. Don't hate any of this. Don't hate depression. Don't hate anxiety. Don't hate your feelings. Don't hate yourself. You can't hate your feelings and claim you love yourself, by the way. You can't. There's no part of you that you could be like, oh, I love all of me except that one thing where I got really jealous or really angry or I feel really weak. You can't do that. Don't do that. Yeah, I probably did enough. All right. Thank you very much for all of your time and all of your attention. I hope that was useful. And I'm doing a seminar on Saturday with Ickonic. I'm really looking forward to doing that. That'll be about overcoming culturally induced codependency and standing up for oneself and detaching from the teat of modern culture and all of its purveyors and perverts, all of its perverted purveyors. If you want to join me for that, is a paid live streaming seminar. It costs £10, and the link for doing that is in the more description bar below. And yeah, that's it. So thank you for spending this precious currency of time and attention with me. I really do appreciate it. It's the most precious currency you have. Spend it wisely. And I look forward to speaking to you very soon. Cheers.